So it's time to talk about week 2 of my PATH classes. PATH classes are the classes we're taking for the fostering process. In week 1, I told you about orientation and the binder. I want to tell you so after orientation classes, we were not feeling overwhelmed or scared off or anything, but over the course of the next week, I had some major issues with anxiety. And I don't mean anxious feelings, I mean actually the anxiety, I don't know what you want to call it, disease, the issue, the medical problem. I don't know that it's entirely related to foster care. It's also the last week in my cycle. It is which has just been a huge issue that I am needing to talk to a doctor about because it's just gotten out of hand. How much that impacts my mood and well-being. And I'm not entirely sure it had to do with foster care, but it is it's another thing for my brain to worry about. And I think it might also have to do with I stayed up late reading some things, so I didn't sleep as much, and I read some books that were pretty negative about the whole process and about the outcomes from the process. And I just didn't do the things that I can do to take care of myself. And in part because I was so physically exhausted, which again, I think has more to do with my hormones than the actual stuff in my life. What I am learning to realize is that anxiety gets anxious about stuff in my life, but it's not necessarily stuff in my life that's causing it as much as it is my physical self is causing the anxiousness. So just want to document that's what happened in the first week. I kind of lost it. I had some days I just couldn't work or focus or think. And I did a lot of reading about foster care and adoption, and read some negative books, read some positive books, ended up finding a really good, encouraging blog. And at no point did I doubt that this is the right thing for us to do. So I haven't yet shot the video, even though I'm sure if you're watching this, you've already seen the video where I talk about why we decided to do this, because I kind of imagine I'm going to publish that one before I publish the videos about the class, because I've thought a lot about why we decided to do it. I haven't shot the video about it yet, but I had such a sense of certainty, and that has not wavered, even a little. Even when I was anxious, it didn't waver that it was definitely the thing we were doing. It was just can I do it? Will I be able to do it? Am I going to mess everything up? So week 2 was understanding the child welfare system. And it started, they had an advocate, a foster parent advocate come in and he started it off, which is a very adversarial place to start it. So he is, you call an advocate when you are having issues with, they're basically a neutral third party. So if you and DCS, the Department of Child Safety, can't work something out, can't come to you feel like they're not listening to you, you feel like they're not following the policies, you feel like something's off with your case, you feel like your caseworker, you can't get a hold of them, or something is weird, or something doesn't go according to policy, you contact the advocate goes with you to meetings, and the advocate will tell you, no, that's the policy, that everything's going the way it should go. So basically he came in and he explained the foster parent Bill of Rights. So the Bill of Rights was passed, I don't know, I think a decade ago, to basically make sure that the foster care parents' rights were not violated and they were respected. And so we explained all about that. And interesting, but super kind of an adversarial way to start it off, right? It just right away, you might have problems with DCS, which is discouraging and kind of upsetting. And we were oh, this is a list of things that can go wrong, basically, and a bunch of examples of things that can go wrong at the process that would hurt us. Obviously things go wrong that are painful for the child. The child is coming out of a broken situation where they've gone through a lot of hard things already, and their parents have gone through a lot of hard things already, and it was just adversarial. Just like, that's the only word I can think of it, that I hadn't been thinking about the process as that adversarial. And then the trainer talked about uh, the process of a kid coming into care. So I'm trying to think if I have it here. I found this super interesting. If you want to learn more about foster care, you might find this interesting as well. So DCS, or actually the Department of Child Protective Services, which is DCPS, removes a child from the home, and then they enter the court system. So within 72 hours, there's a court hearing to see if the child really does need to be removed from the home, like stay out of the home. And then within 30 days, the parent has the opportunity to follow a plan to get the child back. And within 30 days, if the things are like the house was just really, really filthy, and they clean everything, or if the situation was a child was abused by someone who's in the home and they make the person move out of the home, those are the kind of things that can be fixed in 30 days. Things like rehab or being in prison or different levels of abuse can't be solved in 30 days. So through all this, the birth parent has a plan that they have been given by the judge and their caseworker that they need to work through in order for the child to be returned to them. But the goal, as they said repeatedly in weeks 1 and weeks 2, and it's a goal you'll hear anybody who works with DCS saying, the goal is reunification. And what that means is the family is brought back together, the biological family is brought back together. So your goal as a foster parent is to parent and love this child through their family being reunified. And your job, this is something I didn't tell you about in week 1, is to be the resource parent for both the child and the biological parent, meaning that you're there to bring them all together. Now, when they talked about it in week 1, we were like, yeah, okay, definitely. Definitely. I know and am related to and love people who have been in situations where they didn't have the resources to parent their children the way they needed to be parented, and they changed their life. I know many, many people through my experiences with my church family where people have changed their life in order to become a better parent. So I am in it for the parent to be the best parent they can be and get and reunify that child with that parent. So week 2, hearing about the court system really brought that home, that we're kind of involved in this process that this other person is going through, and we're there to support them and the child through this. So then there's different kinds of hearings, and like they have to make a plan, and then they have to ratify the plan, and then the plan has to be followed by all members. And then there's a permanency hearing. There's regularly status reviews every 90 days about is the birth parent following the plan necessary, like getting counseling, being in drug rehab, things like that. And then, so every 90 days or less, they can be changing their life. And then if that doesn't happen, basically there's if the child's been in custody 15 of the past 22 months, or the parent decides to terminate their own rights, or there's something else going on that terminates the parent's rights, like there are some what they call statutory grounds exist for terminating a parent's rights, the parental rights are terminated. That's only after many, many opportunities for things to be changed. So within 12 months of foster care placement, there's a permanency hearing to decide where will the child be placed permanently until either their parents change up or their parents' rights are terminated. And after termination, then the child's available for adoption. But you hear, there are all kinds of situations. Every situation is different. There's a lot of situations where a kid is with the same foster family from day 1 until 3 or 4 years later when the parents' rights are terminated. Other times, their parent goes back and forth, so they go in and out of care and being at home. There's a bunch of different situations. This kind of, I was happy to have this, to see what the steps are. The next thing we talked about was the child and family team meeting. So that's all what happens in the juvenile court. What happens in between is that there are meetings with, let's back up. The birth parent has a caseworker working with usually her, maybe him and her, to on a plan to get their child back. Like, what action do they need to take in order for the child to be returned to them? The child, usually there's a caseworker from Protective Services that removes a child from the home, and then there's a caseworker assigned to the child that basically keeps track of the child's case through whatever else happens, in and out of the home, in and out of foster care, in and out of kinship care, which is when a family member takes care of the child. The child has a worker. And then we have workers. So we have a foster social worker, FSW, who is our caseworker that we contact. So at these meetings, there's at least 3 social workers, parents, the child's us, plus the child is, when they enter into foster care, after that first hearing, it says, yes, they do need to stay out of their birth parent's house. They're assigned a guardian ad litem, often called GAL. I told you there's a lot of shortening. There's an FSW, there's a GAL. The guardian ad litem is a child's attorney. So that's the person who basically builds a case for whatever's in the best interest of the child. And of course, that guardian ad litem is both working with the foster parents, some with the birth parents, a lot with the child social worker about the case, and like the legal side of the case. And sometimes there's also a CASA person. CASA is a state-appointed advocate for the child. Advocates for things like the child wants to do gymnastics, so you need to get gymnast gear, you need to get them signed up for gymnast class, things like that. I don't know a lot about CASA, but I know they're always looking for volunteers, so I see their signs everywhere. Okay, so in the child family team meeting, the CTFM, CFTM, they say the CFTM all the time, you have a lot of those. You have those right as soon as the child's brought into your care. You'll go to a meeting and you'll talk about what the next steps are. There are court dates that are coming up. Is there a plan to follow? Once after like the first or second court date, so within 30 days, then there's a plan. And I forget what the plan's called, but there's a plan for, hold on, I've got it here somewhere. There's basically a plan for everyone in the family. So the parents will have a plan, the birth parents will have a plan they need to follow, the children will have a plan they need to follow. If they're teenagers, they'll have steps they need to take. And not because they're in trouble, but if they have behavioral issues, if they're having school issues, if they're having emotional issues, so things like this person needs to go to counseling each week, or this person needs to do their homework and turn it in each week, or if they're a younger kid, this kid is approved to be in childcare for these hours. And so whatever the child's part of the plan is the things like I have to do as a foster parent, right? I have to take them to the meetings. Oh, it could be that the kid needs to see a dentist, needs to see an ophthalmologist, is having eating issues, so they need to, be tested for different things. They need to go to an occupational therapist. They need to go to a special tutors. All of that is like in a big plan, and that plan is in a legal document. So you guys kind of make it together in some of the first child family team meetings, and then you also sign it, and then the courts ratify it. That's one of the court dates, is to ratify that plan, and that plan is legally binding. You have to do the things in the plan, or else the process doesn't move forward. So as a foster parent, you're like signing off. You're gonna do the things that child needs you to do, basically. And then you have ongoing meetings. So if there's an issue, if you have an issue, if the birth parent has an issue, if whatever, you tell your caseworker that you have a meeting. Everybody shows up again for the meeting. And this can be things like the kid's having a behavioral issue. This can be a thing like something happened in the visitation. So also that legal document is going to say when and what the visitations are. So the visitation can be unsupervised, which means like a social worker drops a kid off and they just hang out with the family member. And also, this isn't just the birth parents. This can also be grandparents. This can be aunts and uncles they're close to. This can be anybody who's been significant in their life and is involved in this process can have visitation. Unsupervised visitation is like unsupervised. They're just alone with the kid doing their thing, right? It's almost like if you have a babysitter come over and you leave, that babysitter's unsupervised with your children. Supervised is they're not alone with the child. So these often take place at like McDonald's or like playgrounds, and either the foster parent is there or the social worker is there. So depending on the situation and the parent and the child, either I would be supervising or the social worker will be supervising. And of course, if you're uncomfortable supervising, you can ask your caseworker to be there, or the child's caseworker to be there, which is often the case. And this is, I mean, of course, it depends on every situation, right? If the parent has struggled with appropriately parenting and disciplining their child, the visits will be supervised, and supervised by someone who can like help them learn the appropriate thing to do. So after learning all that, we were like, what we talked about in the car ride home is this has way more involvement than you'd first think. That might seem obvious and stupid, but there's going to be a lot of meetings to go to, a lot of doctor's visits, because everybody who comes into care immediately within 24 hours needs to have it's like there's a word for it, but they check multiple things, kind of like a physical with a doctor, and vision and teeth and health basically check, and to make sure that like maybe the kid needs glasses. Has the kid been eating like some things that the doctor can see, and so you got to do that within 24 hours or 48, a bunch of stuff. And although we knew that, I think that our vision of the process was like, kid comes to us, the caseworker tells us what to do, gives us the paperwork, tells us what the steps are. We might go to meetings. We might need to bring the kid to some things like supervised or unsupervised visitation. But like the fact that you're not just parenting the child your way and then taking it to places it needs to go, you're also part of the process of deciding what the child needs, and you're part of the process of agreeing to give it to that child. That includes anything to do with the birth parents. So if what's determined is in the best interest of the child is supervised visitation, you might be supervising visitation. If it's if it's any level of involvement with the birth parents, not only are you going there, but also one of the co-trainers is a foster mom of 4 or 5, and she talked about like she puts these little notebooks in diaper bags or away bags that her and the birth parent can make notes for each other in about what they did, what they ate, what they saw, any experience they had. You're basically communicating back and forth with the birth parent, even if you end up not meeting right away. You're co-parenting the child. And this is what the focus was on. There was a little activity about you're co-parenting the child. The foster parent, the birth parent, and the state, DCS, are all co-parenting the child together. So your children that were born to you, you make all of the financial decisions, all the medical decisions, all the schooling decisions, all the discipline decisions, all the who spends time with my child decisions on your own. And I knew that as a foster parent, the state was going to have guidelines, but I don't think I realized to the extent of co-parenting that's involved. That didn't scare us off. We're not worried about that. When I say we're not worried, it's not that it's not serious and we don't take it seriously. It's that that's part of the process. And if this is what we want to do, that's part of the process. So I hope that in talking about it, it didn't make you scared off if you're thinking you want to foster. I'm going to do a video about why we decided this over other things. I will say that fostering is let me say this. In the state of Tennessee, there are 8,000 children in need of a home that are in care, is what they call it, like when the state is their legal guardian. There are only 3,500 licensed homes. So there are 8,000 kids and there are 3,500 licensed homes. So there aren't enough homes for all the children that there are. In the whole country, it's something like there are 400,000 kids in care, and there are only a fraction of the number of homes that are needed. So when I'm talking about this, you are picturing the kids who are being shuttled back and forth, that are being taken out of their homes. I've talked a lot about the birth parent, not a lot about the kids, because the kid is kind of an unknown, right? Like, they could be any age, gender, race, medical issue, emotional issue, behavioral issue. But if talking about that is making you think, okay, like, I would like to help those kids, I hope that you check it out. Your state has its own rules. Basically, if you go to whatever is the child services department in your state, there will be information there. The more and more I read and learn about this, the more passionate I am about helping other people realize that if you would like to have a child through adoption, this is absolutely a way you can go that doesn't have the same costs associated with it as every other form of adoption. B, you can make a real difference to kids' lives, even if you don't end up adopting them. Knowing that I can provide love and food and clothing and shelter and stability and some life skills to some kids who maybe haven't had that, and basically giving them a soft place to land while their family's going through hard times, that seems something we should all be on board with. So that's week 2. I'm feeling so much better. So our class was on Tuesday. I'm recording this on Thursday. I'm at a different point in my cycle, so I feel even better. We are going to do this week's homework. We're going to start doing the things around the house. We're going to make a list of the things we need to do around the house, like the phone line, the outlet covers, the locking everything up, and basically assign them as tasks to me or Jay. This is a great thing about using a project management software like Asana for my business, is that, like, now basically we have had to work out, since we've worked together in our business, how to get things done that need to be done. So when a project like this comes up, which is not work, but just personal, we kind of know how we need to assign things to make sure they don't get done. And so that I, the planner and manager, don't feel like I have to do everything, or just Jay does tons. I feel like I have to, like, remember what needs to be done. But so we're going to work out who's going to do what, and then when, and then start doing things. We've already gotten fingerprinted. I called today to make an appointment to get physicals. The first time they could get us in is June 19th. And as a reminder, this is May 17th. So that's a month before we can get our physicals. And then I think it's a lot of finding documents and copying documents. So I'll keep you guys posted. So thanks so much for watching. Keep in mind that if you're watching this, you are watching it at least a couple weeks after I shot it, so things have changed. My thoughts might have changed. My feelings might have changed. Anything might have changed. And I'm going to publish this anywhere from weeks to months, depending on the process, after I shot it. But I want to shoot it in real time so we could remember and see how I really felt back then on May 17th.